Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs Reviews YouTube channel. Today we're looking at filler books. Which books are and are not filler? Now these might prove controversial, but everybody sort of agrees that there are filler books in the series, so I don't think I'm overstepping any bounds making such suggestions. I'm using Tier Maker to do this, so I've got every book here in a list, and we've got a 5-row tier thing. So at the top is essential. I don't really need to explain that. Then you've got important, stuff that really makes a difference in the series, but if you didn't read that, you could pretty quickly catch up. Supplemental is that it's not necessarily important to the plot, but it just adds, it's like adding a spice to a meal. And then you've got filler, which is like adding air to a meal. It's like being able to breathe while eating a meal, you know, it's not really part of the meal, it's just sort of there. And then you've got non-canon, which is pretty self-explanatory. We've got 64 books to put into this list. And so I'm going to start with the obvious ones, get those out of the way. So where's the Invasion? That is essential. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. Where the bloody hell is it, though? Where is it? I found the beginning.
All the way on the left, darling.
It's on the left, is it?
No.
Oh yeah, there it is. Right, so that one goes into the essential box. Not many people are going to disagree with the first book, big exposition book, being essential to the series. Another one that's essential is the last book, the beginning, because that's the end. That's how it ends. But that's also, it's almost a two-parter ending, joined with book 53, The Answer. So I'm going to put that one in essential as well, which is this one. So we've got 3 essential books there. And the rest of them are a bit less of, I think one that's absolutely essential without question is The Message, where we get Axe involved with the squad. So yeah, I don't think that's controversial either. So 4 books in the essential box. The rest of them are more down to speculation and questioning. So let's go through them one at a time. Number 26, The Attack. It's mostly an Elemis Kryak thing. There's some chi involvement, and we get to learn about the Escort and the Howlers, both of which don't appear again. But we also get Jake and Cassie's first kiss. It's the moment where they actually they genuinely enter a relationship. It's certainly not essential, and I don't think it's not filler, so it's either important or supplemental. It's a really good book. Oh, by the way, disclaimer, the position that I put the books in here is not a reflection on the quality of the book or how good I think the book is. It's not. There will be some books that go in filler that are really good, and there will be some books that either go into essential important that are absolute dross. So that's no telling on that. This one, I think I'm gonna keep it in supplemental. Yeah, you get Cassie and Jake's relation properly coming to the front, but we already knew sort of they were in a relationship. I'm trying to think what else happened in that book. Yeah, the Escort, the Chi. It's actually closer to filler than important, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's filler. I think there's a bit too much in it to be filler. Number 52, The Sacrifice, where they blow up the Urk pool. And the Andalites are talking about quarantine. It's got to go essential. Essential? Yeah. I don't think blowing up the Urk pool was basically what they wanted to do from book 1, and it was that final play that brought the Urks down, the Urk pool ship. Yeah, it's essential. Number 47, my favourite book in the whole bloody series, The Resistance. So what happens in this one? They protect the the new Hork-Bajir Valley, and we get a lot of in-depth character stuff with Jake. It's not essential, I wouldn't say. Is it important? It's certainly not filler. Is it important or supplemental? The whole Hork-Bajir resistance part, saving the Hork-Bajir as the onslaught, I'm going to put it in important for that. There's a lot of important stuff with Jake's character as well, but character stuff isn't exactly plot important, at least not most of the time. It's not essential, but I think because of the Hawk-Bajir plotline, it puts it into the important box. Number 41, The Familiar, my second favourite book of the series. Really fantastic book, but where does it fit in on the filler scale? It's not filler. I think the abort button scene at the very end and the fight scene at the start where Cassie starts to drift away from the group to a bigger extent, those aren't necessarily important plot points in themselves, and the large majority of this is a dream. So I think it's fair that this one stays in supplemental. Not a reflection on the quality of the book, because it's one of the best books in the series as far as I'm concerned, but it has to go into the supplemental box. Number 48, The Return, another really good book. This one, I think, it's very much like The Familiar, where there's a lot of important character stuff, but more in terms of foreshadowing and placing their character arcs in a certain place. There is no real plot point in here. I think most of it is a dream sequence or a fabricated scenario by Kryak. So no real important plot points. You could say, oh, David got killed, but we don't know that. We really don't. We don't know if David was even really there. I'm going to keep it in supplemental for Rachel's character. Number 39, The Hidden. Now, this is where we're going to have some fun, because the Buffer human storyline is filler. It's definitely filler. But is it non-canon? Is it non-canon? Because what defines non-canon? It's where it doesn't follow the rules of the set lore, or it breaks the rules, or it disregards the rules. And one of the rules of the Esquivel device is just gone here. The rule is broken beyond any reasonable measure. But the buffalo just touches, the ant touches it and acquires the morphing power, which just is not how the morphing cube works. So I'm going to put it in non-canon, because it was filler, and on top of that, it breaks Animorphs' lore. So, my perspective, The Hidden might as well be non-canon. Sorry for any fans of The Hidden out there. Number 46, The Deception. This has the big open war in the ocean, so it's going to be at least important. And what keeps it up there is Axe's betrayal at the end, which I think plays heavily into Axe's character development, but also Jake's. It's bordering on essential. It's not a very good book, but the plot points that happen in it are sort of bordering between essential and important. I'm going to keep it in important for now, because Axe's betrayal played into Jake's character arc and Axe's character arc, but had no direct impact on what happens in the following books, from what I remember. Yeah, basically, I'm going to keep it important. Number 50, The Ultimate, where we bring in the auxiliary Animorphs. And for that reason alone, it is essential, because they played a part in what eventually became the end of the war. And the Yeerk's got the Morphing Cube, so there's no question that one is an essential read. Right, now we're getting interesting. Alternamorphs 2, The Next Passage. Let's do both Alternamorphs in one, shall we? The first one, the first journey, is non-canon. Just straight up non-canon. I don't even think... If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a rewriting of books 1 and 11 with you inserted in it. Next Passage is a bit different, because it's quite obvious when you read it that you're not you. You're David. And there's weird time shenanigans going on. And then the bit at the very end, wasn't it, he decided to go back to the construction site where he found the Morphing Cube, and it just sort of ends there. And there's all this stuff where he's becoming bitter with the animals because they're, like, putting him in bottles and torturing him. You could argue that it's non-canon, definitely, and that's an understandable position to take. But you could also argue that it is canon. Because time weirdness happens all over Animorphs. And with that in mind, everything in here could possibly fit into canon without any inherent contradictions. And if that were the case, it would be supplemental for David's character, establishing why he's the way he is in the actual David trilogy. So I'm going to keep it in supplemental. Interesting, isn't it? Number 10, the android. We meet the Chi, so that's definitely essential, even though the Chi are traitorous bollock brains. That's going into essential. Book 11, The Forgotten. This is mostly about Jake's leadership. I think most Jake books are important in some regard, to a bigger or lesser extent regarding his leadership. The Amazon adventure, which eventually doesn't happen. We're introduced to Sario Rips, but do they really ever play a role again? What other times do we get Sario Rips? Do you not remember?
Time of the Dinosaurs, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Time of Dinosaurs. I'm going to count it. Filler? Yeah, I'm going to keep it in filler. I mean, it plays a little bit into Jake's character, but nothing that we don't really get anywhere else. So, first filler book, The Forgotten. Soon to be forgotten. Number 12, The Reaction, filler. A more obvious choice for filler because it's the whole... It's the burping out the morphs. I forget what... Do you remember what the actual name of it is?
No.
No. I forget. Yeah, it's quite forgettable. Nothing major to the plot, but it's canon. Even though we never really see it again, it's still canon, but it's filler. It's definitely filler. Number 13, The Change. Tobias gets his morphing power back and we establish the Hork-Bajir Free Colony. It's essential. I'm going to try to put these in order. The essential ones. Because if you're going through this list and you think, oh, I want to read just the essential books, I will put them in the correct order for you. Like, there. That's correct order. Yes, it is. Number 14, The Unknown. It's a good book. It's a fun book. But it is indeed filler. Get some great lines in there. And some good comedy scenes. Good, yeah, just well written. Really nice book. But it is filler. Nothing really important happens here. There's an Andalite toilet. Where does that come in again? You tell me. Book 15, The Escape. We find Eva at the bottom of the ocean. There are hammerhead sharks that the Yerks are trying to use to take over planet Lyra. Marco doesn't manage to save his mother at the end. Does the Lyra stuff make it important? I would say not. Because when we eventually do go to Lyra, we don't see sharks, I don't think. And nor would it be that important to see that. We could just go there and there'd be a message. I'm going to put it in supplemental. What happened with Eva? Marco already knows she's alive. Yeah, I'm going to keep it in supplemental. Number 16, The Warning. It's definitely not filler. I've made that point clear several times. Is it supplemental or is it important? Jake's leadership, again, it's actually more important for Jake's leadership because he does become the true leader in this one. He decides, right, I have to make these decisions. And we also get some foreshadowing of the sorts of decisions that the Animorphs are going to have to make in the future. It's bordering on important. Somewhere around here. The plot itself isn't that important. But I think Jake's progression into full-on leader, I think, is important for the context of the series. So I'm going to just about get into the important category. Number 17, The Underground. We discover hunter robots. That's about it. We find out that Rachel is scared of small spaces. We find out that oatmeal is poisonous to the Yerks, or toxic to the Yerks, but they never do anything with it again. As much as I hate that book, I don't think it's filler. Because we're establishing that Rachel's got a certain fear. As much as I want to put the book in filler, I don't think it is. I think it goes in supplemental. Book 18, The Decision. The Animorphs blow up an entire continent. I don't think that's filler. And they find out there are treasonous Andalites, that the Andalites aren't all they're cracked up to be, and Axe starts to question his allegiance to them. Again. And for the second time out of probably 10. Hewlett Aldershot, the third scene. Axe chases Visser 3. And we get the whole... we learn a lot about zero space. I think that goes into important. Blowing up the entire continent of a planet. Ending the Lyran War. Yeah, it's important. It's definitely important. It's not essential, but it's important. Number 19, The Departure. I think it's at least important because it's essentially the beginning of the peace movement. Yeah?
They stated in the books that if Lyran had needed help, that the Andalites would have gone to Earth. So I think it's very important.
Yeah. Yeah, I've put it in the important one. I wouldn't say it's essential. We're talking about book 18, and I wouldn't say it's essential. I wouldn't say that missing out on the Lyran stuff is going to stop you being able to understand the series. Okay. 19, on the other hand, start of the peace movement, I think it's just about essential. So I'm going to put that in there. Yeah, Yeerk peace movement, bringing in the nuance of the Yeerks. Yeah, I think that's an essential part of the series. The David trilogy. I think these all have to go together, don't they? So where's the other ones? Where are the other ones? Oh, they're right here, right next to each other. Discovery, Threat, Solution. These are basically one long book put together. So they're all going to go together. How important was David to the series? I don't think David was essential. He wasn't essential. He added a lot of ingredients to the series that, in context, were required. Was his arc essential to the changing of the Animorphs? It's the same sort of argument as The Warning, where stuff happened in The Warning that not necessarily is that important to the plot, but it adds ingredients to the characters which allows them to progress forward. I'm going to put them in important. Because yeah, after David's disappearance, apart from the brief reappearance in book 48, which questionably might not have been him, he doesn't really come in again. He's more just sort of a memory from then on. So yeah, I think important is the right way to go about that one. Book 23, The Pretender. This one might stir the Animorphs fans' pot a bit. We find out that Tobias is Elfangor's son, but do we ever see the consequences of that? No. I think by definition that's supplemental information. What's the other storyline? That we sort of meet Toby Hammy, but we kind of met her at the end of the Hawkbridge Chronicles, so I'm not going to say that. The whole Beck storyline was fun, but non-essential. What do you think that learning that Tobias is Elfangor's son is important or supplemental information?
I think supplemental.
I agree, actually. Yeah, I'm going to keep that one in supplemental. I'm sure some fans will want to crucify me for that, but sod them. Number 25, The Extreme. I think it's filler. It's a good book. It's a really good book. Really interesting. We see Derek the Inuit and Nanook the bear. We come across a new alien race whose name I forget. Might be the Vember. Is it the Vember? It was the one that was melted to use Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid?
Vember.
It was Vember. The ice ones. But they never come into it again. Yeah, it's a good book, but it's filler. Number 27, The Exposed, where you find the Pemelite ship. That is later found again, or chased again, in book 36, but I wouldn't say that one was important either. We meet the Droid for the first time. But does the Droid is just Kryak's little bitch? I'm not going to say it's important. I think it's supplemental. Although it does... No, I'm... Yeah, supplemental. Keep it there. Number 28, The Experiment. Filler. It's funny filler, but it's a book where they're trying to stop Visser 3 from stopping free will, which is just a bizarre story, a typical Visser 3 scheme, and it's just Axe quoting TV shows for a whole book. It's fun, but it's definitely filler. Number 29, The Sickness. The one where Cassie acquires the Yerk-morph. We learn a bit more about the Yerk peace movement. Not that much, but she gets help from the Yerks. Tidwell's Yerk. Aftran. And I think they turn Aftran into a whale at the end of it, from what I remember. I think it was this book. And there's this weird disease that's going around that's affecting the Animorphs, which doesn't make sense because it affects the Tria gland, which is an Andalite-specific gland in the brain. So why the Animorphs are falling sick, I don't know. The plot is so bad. Not bad. The plot is so wrong that it's close to non-canon. It's close to breaking all reason, but it's sci-fi, so there might be some reason. So I'm not going to put it in non-canon. Filler. No. Because of the whole Aftran stuff, it wasn't for the Aftran whale bit. It probably would be filler, but it goes into supplemental. Book 30, The Reunion. Once again, Marco trying to save his mother, much like in Book 15, The Escape. They think they locate the Hork-Bajir Valley. That she helped to stop that from happening. But we find out that this one has fallen out of favour with the Yerks, and she's now on the run, which I think for the series is actually quite important. So yeah, I'm going to put that over in important. The Conspiracy, Grandpa G's book. The one where Jake tries to kill Tom. Very important for Jake's character development, and considering I think he is the pinnacle character of the series, it's verging on important. Oh, where does it go? Supplemental. It's between, but I think it falls... Again, the Warning, the David trilogy plays into that sort of thing. I think it's supplemental. Because even though he attempted to kill Tom, that's an action born of something that's been going on in the background progressively for a while. So, yeah, I think it's supplemental. Good book, though. Number 32, The Separation. Mean Rachel and Nice Rachel. The book that almost destroyed Rachel's entire character arc. It's filler. It's definitely filler. I'm not going to say it's non-canon, even though it's probably close, because reducing Rachel's character to that was just wrong. But no, it goes in filler. It really is a skippable book, honestly. Number 33, The Illusion. As much as I hate this book, it brings in Taylor, which is important for Tobias's arc. But honestly, Tobias's arc was a bit of a mess. It's a supplemental one, I think. What else happened in this one? The anti-morphing ray, which was just a complete dud of a Yerk scheme. Yeah. Supplemental. Only because it introduces Taylor, who is instrumental in Book 43. Yeah, there it goes. Book 34, The Prophecy. This is one of those ones where it's either supplemental or filler. But, where's the Hork-Bajir Chronicles? Where is it? There it is. It goes in tandem with the Hork-Bajir Chronicles because it ties up loose ends that we have at the end of that Chronicles book. And so these two are like a pair. So I think these two need to go together. Or no, maybe not, because at the end of the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, we're introduced to Toby, who was essential. If it weren't for that very last scene in that book, the Hork-Bajir Chronicles would be supplemental, because it shows you how that war started. So that book goes into important. Yeah, because Toby's introduction was just a little tiny bit, and then it was just further explained in The Pretender, which was a supplemental book here. If you combine those two, it would probably be essential, but... Is it essential? I'm thinking now it might be essential, because what happens in the Hawkbee Chronicles is we learn the Andalite war tactic of cluster and boom. And it's put in full display here, which is what the Andalites attempt to do at the end of the main series. I'm going to keep it in important. As for book 34, yeah, we tie up the loose ends of that. Find out about the Axilla stuff, but that's all... it's halfway between supplemental and filler. We establish a new faction, but we never see that faction again. It's bouncing between supplemental and filler. Because it ties up the loose ends of Hawkbee Chronicles, I'm going to put it into supplemental. Is that fair? I think that's fair. Number 35, The Proposal. It's basically the reaction. There's a little bit at the end where he gets a phone call from Eva, but really the book didn't need it. It was just like a little cliffhanger to prepare you for the oncoming Visser. So yeah, I'm going to keep it in filler. Good book. Really good stuff in that book, though. Speaking of Visser, let's get that one in. I think it's supplemental. Because we don't really need to understand, need it to understand where of... Do it in the same way that Hawkbee Chronicles. You remember Visser, don't you? Would you say there's anything important or supplemental?
Supplemental.
You think supplemental? Now, if... There are a few scenes in Visser, like, for example, they're talking about one of you is going to get executed. If they had have followed through with that, it would have been essential, but it never follows through with anything it promises, this book. Is it that important that we knew how the invasion started? Not necessarily. On the other hand, looking at the Hawkbee Chronicles, is it important to know the Andalite tactics for war? Yes, because they're a large faction in that war. So I think there is a difference, but you could also say that the tactics that the Yeerks used to invade Earth is... I'm going to put it next to the Hawkbee Chronicles in important for that reason. Because I can't say it for one and not say it for the other. Okay? So, put that there. Number 36, The Mutation. There are some... I think if it had been rewritten and the books after this one had been rewritten better, I think this would have been quite an important book. But alas... the little character moments we get in it weren't fully utilised. And the Narthex aren't utilised again. I think it's a good book, but it just falls below into the filler category. The weakness. Dear God, it's close to non-canon. It is close to non-canon. It's that bad that nothing about it is right. The whole Garatron thing is never mentioned again. It follows up on the storyline from the Visser, but it really doesn't do anything with it at all. Rachel's the leader for a day, basically, and fucks everything up in the worst possible way. In my head, considering that I'm making this list and you're free to make the list yourself and put it where you want, I prefer to see this as non-canon. It's that bad. And just the stuff that happens in it, I don't want to believe actually happened. So, yeah, non-canon for me, I'm afraid. There's nothing in the book to suggest that it's not canon, apart from the fact that the characters aren't acting right. So, yeah, it's bordering on filler, but I'm going to put it in non-canon. Book 38, The Arrival, essential. Because we learn that the Andalites are off dealing with the Inati, rather than coming down to Earth. And that's pretty important information coming to the end of the series. So yeah, that one definitely goes in there. Number 40, the other, filler. Just complete filler. It plays in nothing into the series. There's no character development for Marco. It's filler. And a pretty rubbish book at that. Number 42, The Journey. The second Helmicron book. It's crap. But it's not non-canon. It's filler. Number 43, The Test. I think it's supplemental. Taylor's back. We learn that Tobias did make the decision to stay in his morph. But I still think that falls into the supplemental information category. It's not filler. So yeah, supplemental. Number 44, The Unexpected. Supplemental. The plot stuff, not important. But the underlying character stuff is pretty important for Cassie, especially as it comes to the end of the war and post-war, how she reacts to it all. So yeah, supplemental. 45, The Revelation. Marco tells his dad, Visser 1 is killed. As much as I hate the book and wish that it would be rewritten sometime, it's essential. As I said at the start of the video, where it goes on here is not an indication of how good the books actually are. It's a crap book, but it's essential for understanding the course of the series. Book 51, I think. Or is it 50? Yeah, it's 51. I'm pretty sure. The Absolute, the one with the mallards. Or is it 50? It's one of the later ones. It should be essential. They tell the governor of California, oh, big stuff. And it's just, apart from that, it's just action scenes. But yeah, tell the governor. But then what happens in the next book? The governor isn't listened to. So the Animorphs have to start from square one, basically. Supplemental. Close to filler, but that's my own bias, personal bias for how crap the book was seeping in. It is supplemental, which is a shame, really. Number 9, The Secret. It establishes Cassie's character. The actual mission is not that important. Dapson Lumber, which is apparently the Yerk word for pee-pee. But this book, I think character development books border on important. It's somewhere between there, but I'm going to put it in supplemental for now. The Capture. We get Temrash, who's Tom's Yerk. We learn about being a controller for the very first time. We see Kryak for the first time, but only in a sort of weird vision. I'm going to put this one in important. I think for obvious reasons. Number 2, The Visitor. We learn about Chapman, Melissa. We get to know a bit more about Rachel's character, but not that much. Supplemental. Second book in the series. We just take some of the stuff further from book 1. What else happened in that one? I think that's pretty much it. It's just establishing some character stuff and expanding upon the world of Animorphs and how it affects little people. Yes, supplemental. Good book, but just supplemental. 24, The Suspicion, the first Helmicron book. Filler. Need I say more? Number 40, you got something to say? Don't like that one? You like that one?
It's just funny.
It is quite funny. But it is filler. Book 49, The Diversion. They save their families. They move them to the Hortbajir Valley. Tobias saves Lauren. I think it's important. Again, it's not a great book. It's not the worst in the essential part, but yeah, it's quite important because you have to know where the parents end up going. And number 7, The Stranger. We introduced the Elemist. So that is definitely up here in the Essentials box. The Alien with Axe. He eventually contacts the homeworld. And we just have a few jokes with him every so often. It's a character development book for him. So much in the same way that The Secret is supplemental for establishing Cassie's character, the Alien's got to go into the supplemental box. Apart from that, I don't think there was that much important stuff going on. Number 5, The Predator. We find out who Marco's mum now is. Essential. And one of the best books in the series by a mile. And now we move on to... Well, let's get let's get the main series done. So book 3, The Encounter. Again, it's another character development one, supplemental. I've made that standard now, I have to stick by it, so it goes into supplemental. And now we move on to these ones. So Megamorphs. Megamorphs 1, The Andalite's Gift. Filler. I think all of these are filler, honestly. In the Time of Dinosaurs. Great book. Filler. Megamorphs 3. One of the best books in the series. Filler. Which is a shame, really, because it is such a good book. It's so good. It's just, if it wasn't filler, if it actually played into the actual plot of the book, it would probably be the best book in the series. But alas, it's a Megamorphs, and Megamorphs is just a playground for the authors. So they're all filler. You don't need them. They're just little add-ons. Fun add-ons, for the most part, but add-ons nonetheless. And the last 2 Chronicles books, so the Andalite Chronicles. Establishes Elfangor's character. Because the Hulpijir Chronicles and Visser establish major aspects of the current Yerk War. The Andalite Chronicles is the Yerk War as well, but it says nothing about tactics. It's more Elfangor as an individual going through this war, whereas the Hulpijir Chronicles and Visser were basically the generals and tactics and all that important stuff into how things are operating. Andalite Chronicles doesn't really do that as much. Establishes the time matrix, but that's mainly only used in Megamorphs, so that's not really essential for the series itself, or the main series, main plotline. What important things that happened in the Andalite Chronicles?
Just backstory. I don't think you really need to know it. But
yeah, I'm gonna put it in supplemental. Yeah, I think that's a fair place to put the Andalite Chronicles. And the last one, Elemist Chronicles. Elemist Chronicles.
Not filler.
Oh, it's certainly not filler. We're established because the Elemist plays a huge role in everything.
It's just adding to the richness of the story.
Yeah. It sort of explains his backstory, where he came from, but is that necessary? If you read the whole book series and didn't read the Elemist Chronicles, you're not missing out on anything. I think it falls under the definition of supplemental information. So that's that. I think that's a pretty fair list. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 essential books. So if you wanted the absolute compacted version of the Animorphs series, if you only had time to read 14 books, those are the ones I'd recommend you read. And funnily enough, it's mostly from the very beginning and the very end of the series. Which it makes sense. It does make sense. But you've also got 19 and 38 thrown into the middle there, so that's pretty good. The important ones are sort of scattered throughout the series. Again, with the supplemental, it's a scattering. The fillers. Mostly the Megamorphs books. A few from earlier in the series, which is quite surprising. But yeah, it's a scattering, so yeah, I think I'm happy with that list. Only 3 books non-canon, including Alternamorphs. There are 2 main series books that I'm just like, nah, it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Forget it happened. Yeah, if you're new to the Animorphs series and you've come here to find out, oh, there's a lot of books here, I don't want to read all of them, I recommend the essential and the important ones. If you've got more time, supplemental. But the rest of them, you don't need to read. Although I will say that if you did have more time and you were going to dip your toes into the filler stuff, Megamorphs 3 is definitely the one to go and read. This book is just fantastic. If I could, it would go up here, but alas, it can't. Anyway, that is ranking the Animorphs books in terms of their importance to the series. Awesome. I'm glad if you watched to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ra!